The piano keys snapped under his finger with a sharp click, and the sound cut through the practice room like a crack in glass. He pulled his hand back fast. Across the room, she stopped mid-note. Her chair scraped the floor, slow and rough. They stared at each other, not speaking, not moving, just the faint smell of old wood and dust between them. The teacher had locked the door from outside. One piano, 2 students who refused to even sit in the same row. He moved first, not toward her, but toward the broken key. He pressed it again. It sank too deep, a dull thud instead of music. She let out a short breath, almost a laugh, but not kind. "Great," she said, her voice low. "Now it's worse." He shrugged without looking at her. It was already bad. Silence again, thick this time. The kind that sits in your chest. The hallway outside was empty. No footsteps. No voices. Just a soft hum of lights and the ticking wall clock. They had been placed together for the school performance. No one knew why. Everyone knew they didn't get along. In class, they never looked at each other. When one spoke, the other found something else to do. It had been like that for months. Small things at first. A wrong note blamed on the other. A comment taken the wrong way. Then louder words. Then no words at all. Now they stood in a locked room with one broken piano. She walked over, slow steps, arms crossed. He stepped back, giving space, but not leaving. She pressed a few keys, testing. The sound was uneven. One key dead. Others slightly off. She frowned, tapping the edge with a finger. "We can't play like this." He leaned against the wall. "Then we don't play." She looked at him, sharp. "We have to. It's tomorrow." He didn't answer. He just looked at the floor, at the small crack running between the tiles. She sat down anyway, adjusted the bench, took a breath, started playing around the broken key, skipping it, shifting her fingers fast to cover the gap. The melody stumbled, but it kept going. He listened, arms still folded, eyes half closed. The sound wasn't perfect. It wasn't clean, but it was. Something. Say stop. You're supposed to come in after this part." He didn't move. She tried again. Played the same section, slower this time. Her foot tapped the pedal, soft creak under her shoe. The note before the broken key rang a bit longer, filling the empty space. She glanced at him. "Come on, just try." He pushed off the wall, walked over, sat at the other side of the bench, but far enough that their arms wouldn't touch. His fingers hovered over the keys. He pressed one, then another. Testing, like she did. The piano felt rough under his hands, slightly sticky, a thin layer of dust clinging to the edges. They started together, but it didn't work. He came in too early. She stopped. He sighed. They tried again, and again. Small mistakes, tiny corrections. No smiles, no apologies, just short words. "Too fast. You're late. Skip that note." "I know." Minutes passed. Maybe more. The light outside the small window shifted a little. The air grew warmer. At one point, her sleeve brushed his arm. Both of them froze for a second, then kept playing. Something began to change, but it was quiet. Not big, not obvious. He started watching her hands instead of the keys. She started listening for his part, adjusting her timing just a little. The broken key was still there, still silent, but they found ways around it. She played softer before his part. He came in smoother after hers. Their breathing, at some point, lined up without them noticing. They reached the middle of the piece, the hardest part. Fast notes, crossovers, tight timing. They failed twice. On the third try, he slowed just a fraction. She followed. Their fingers moved faster now, closer, sometimes almost touching, but never quite. The sound filled the small room, Unaben, but alive. Then she missed a note. Stopped, closed her eyes, pressed her lips together. He didn't stop this time. He kept playing his part. Slower, softer, like he was leaving space for her to come back in. She opened her eyes, watched his hands, and joined again. The melody came back together, fragile but steady. They didn't say anything after that. They just played, from the start, all the way through. The broken key stayed silent every time they passed it, but somehow it didn't feel empty anymore. When they finished, their hands stayed on the keys for a moment. The last note faded into the quiet room. The clock kept ticking. She looked at him, not sharp this time. Just looking. Enoded once small. Careful. Outside, someone tried the door handle. It didn't open. They looked back at the piano and started again. The next day, the stage lights were too bright, the kind that makes your eyes water if you stare too long. The audience filled the hall with a low murmur. Programs rustled. Chairs creaked. Somewhere in the back, someone coughed. They walked on stage together, side by side, not touching, but not far apart either. The same piano stood in the center, the same broken key. Still there, still waiting. A teacher leaned in and whispered, "Just do your best, sat down." Adjusted the bench. Took their places. For a second, neither of them moved. The room felt big, too big. But then he tapped the first note. Soft, steady. She followed right after. The music started simple, clear. Their hands moved with a rhythm they had built in that small locked room. The audience grew quiet, listening. When they reached the broken key, they didn't hesitate. She shifted, just like before. He filled the space, just like before. No panic, no pause, just a small, practiced adjustment that most people wouldn't even notice. Their shoulders almost touched during the faster parts. Their timing stayed tight. When one slowed, the other followed. When one pushed forward, the other trusted and moved with it. There were still tiny flaws. A note slightly too soft, a finger landing just a bit late. But it didn't break the piece. It made it feel real. Halfway through, he glanced at her. Just for a second. She didn't look back, but her playing changed. Softer on the next line, like she had heard something unspoken. They finished together, both hands landing on the final chord at the same time. Clean, full, strong. For a moment, no one clapped. Not because it was bad, but because it needed a second to settle. Then the applause came, growing fast, filling the hall. They stood up, took a small bow. Still not touching, still not smiling wide. But something had shifted. Backstage, other students talked, laughed, moved around them. Someone said, "That was really good." Another said, "I didn't know you two could play like that." They didn't answer right away. She finally spoke, quiet. "You kept the tempo. Better this time." He nodded. "You covered the gap." A small pause. "Yeah," she said. "We both did." They didn't become best friends after that. They didn't suddenly forget everything from before, but they practiced together again. Not because they had to, because it worked. Weeks later, the broken key was fixed. The piano sounded whole again, but they still played like it was there, still leaving space for each other, still listening a little closer. Their story never made big news. No headlines, no viral clips. But in that school, people remembered. It became one of those true life stories teachers would quietly mention. A small example of how two people, stuck in the same place, found a way through. It turned into one of those inspirational stories students told each other before performances. A reminder that not every emotional story needs perfect people or perfect instruments. Sometimes, real-life stories are just two students, one broken piano, and a choice to try again. And in that choice, there are hidden talent stories, courage stories, and resilience stories woven together. Small, but real. The kind that grow into personal growth stories over time. Because not all uplifting journeys start with friendship. Some start with silence. and a single note that refuses to sound. And still, somehow, the music finds a way. The next morning felt like every other morning. Same gray skies, same heavy bag, same back corner of the same classroom. Liam had no idea that while he was sleeping, one quiet phone call had set something in motion that was bigger than anything his school, his grades, or his broken confidence had ever touched. Third period ended. A note landed on his desk, not from a student. From the front office, it said, "Come to room 14 after school. Mr. Rossi." That was it. No explanation. Liam turned the note over. Nothing on the back. He read it again. His first thought, what did I do wrong? Because that is what years of being invisible does to a person. When someone finally notices you, your first instinct is to assume you are in trouble. He almost did not go. He stood outside room 14 for 4 full minutes, hand on the door, telling himself this was nothing, telling himself to walk away. But then he thought about Mr. Rossi's face in that corridor, that slow, serious nod, and something in his chest pushed him forward. He opened the door. 2 people were inside. Mr. Rossi, standing by the window, arms folded, nodding the moment Liam walked in, and a woman Liam had never seen. She was sitting at the table calm and still, watching him with eyes that were not judging, not waiting, just present. She said her name was Ms. Diallo. She taught at the Eastfield Academy of Music on the other side of town. She had driven there that afternoon. Because of one phone call. Because one janitor had stopped walking when everyone else kept moving. She looked at Liam and said, "I hear you play piano." Liam glanced at Mr. Rossi. Mr. Rossi just nodded once. Liam said, "I don't really play. I was just touching the keys." Ms. Diallo smiled. Not the polite kind to rail-kenned. She stood up, walked to the corner of the room, and pulled back a cloth cover. Underneath it was a small upright piano. Clean, tuned, waiting. She turned to Liam and said 3 words no teacher had ever said to him. "Show me something." Not, "Prove yourself." Not, "Let's see if you're good enough." Just show me something. Like whatever came out of him would be worth hearing. Like she had already decided to be curious before he played a single note. Liam sat down on the bench. His hands were shaking. He looked at the keys for a moment. 88 of them. White and black, clean and waiting, like a question only he could answer. He closed his eyes, and he played. Not a song he had learned. Not something from a YouTube video or a school music class. Something that came out of him straight from the place where all the silence lived. All the failed exams. All the dinners where nobody spoke. All the nights on the cold floor ask himself what the point of him was. His fingers moved like they already knew where to go. Like the piano was not a new thing at all. Like it had always been there, waiting, and he had just finally found his way to it. He played for 2 minutes. The room was completely still. Ms. Diallo did not move. Mr. Rossi did not move. When Liam stopped, the silence that followed was not empty dead weight. It had texture. It was the silence of 2 people sitting with something they had not expected. Ms. Diallo looked at him for a long moment. Tenses sighed. "How long have you been playing?" Liam said. "About 2 weeks." She looked at Mr. Rossi, then back at Liam. Then she said, "I want to offer you a full scholarship to East starting next month." Liam stared at the piano keys and said nothing. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. He had been playing for 2 weeks on a dusty old piano in an empty school corridor, and a woman who ran a real music academy had driven across town to offer him a scholarship. Not because he had trained for years, not because he had any certificates or any proof or any history of talent, but because one evening, alone and unself-conscious and completely himself, he had sat down and played. And the music that came out was real. It had always been real. Nobody had just been close enough to hear it. He went home that evening with the scholarship letter folded in his bag. He put it on the kitchen table in front of his mother. She read it slowly. He watched her face. She finished reading, looked up, and said, "Piano's not a real future, Liam." And something shifted in him. Not anger, not tears. A quiet, solid certainty he had never felt before in his life. He looked at his mother and said, "I'm going." 2 words, flat and calm and completely unmovable. She looked at him for a long time, then she looked away. She did not say yes, but she did not say no, and for Liam, that was enough. Eastfield was hard. Every other student had been learning since they were 5 or 6 years old. They knew scales, theory, notation, technique. Liam knew none of it. He sat in classes, feeling lost, behind, out of place. Some days the gap felt impossible. But here, nobody had already decided what he was. Here, he was not the boy in the back corner. He was the boy Ms. Diallo had driven across town to find. That difference was everything. So I worked every morning before class, every evening after. Fingertips sore, eyes tired, brain full of things he did not yet understand. He did not work to prove something to his mother or his old teachers or the classmates who had left. He worked because the piano was the first thing in his life that made him feel like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. And when something feels like that, no amount of difficulty can stop you. 2 years later, Eastfield held its annual showcase. A real theater. A real audience. Real lights. Ms. Diallo had entered Liam to perform an original composition. A piece he had written himself, slowly, over months, pulling every feeling he had ever swallowed and putting it into sound. The night before the show, he sat alone at the piano in the empty rehearsal room and played it through one last time. It was the same feeling as that very first evening in the school corridor. Just him and the keys and the silence around them. He walked onto the stage, and the lights were warm and the seats were full. He did not know that Mr. Rossi was sitting in the 3rd row. He did not know that Ms. Diallo had personally called his mother and told her, "You need to come. You need to see your son." He sat down at the piano, took one breath, and play the 6 minutes. The theater did not make a sound for 6 full minutes. No phones, no shuffling, no whispers, just a room full of people held completely still by a boy who had once scored 14 out of 100 on a math exam and been laughed at for it. When the last note faded, the audience rose before he even lifted his hands. The sound that came out from those seats was not polite applause. It was something that happens when people feel something real, something that reaches past all their walls and lands directly in their chest. Liam looked out into the light. He found his mother's face. She was standing, both hands over her mouth, crying, not the tired kind, not the sad kind, the kind that only comes when a person realizes they were completely, totally wrong about someone they love. She was looking at her son like she was seeing him for the very first time in 14 years. Maybe she was. After the show, Mr. Rossi found him backstage. The old man put one hand on Liam's shoulder, said nothing, just nodded. Slow and serious, the same nod from that corridor 2 years ago. Then he picked up his coat and walked out quietly into the night. He did not need to say a single word. He had already said everything that mattered the night he made that phone call. "This is what I want you to remember." Liam did not change his life because the world suddenly became fair. It did not. He did not change his life because he got lucky. He changed his life because one person stopped, and Liam had the courage to sit down at that piano even when no one was watching, even when he thought it meant nothing, even when he had every reason to believe he was nothing. He played. Anyway, that is the whole secret. Not talent. Not timing, not the right school or the right family or the right circumstances. Just keep going when everything is telling you to stop. Keep playing when the room is empty. Because you never know who is about to walk down that corridor and hear you. One person stopped for Liam, and everything changed. Your moment is coming. Do not go quiet before it arrives.